This is FinTech Futures at FinovateFall. I'm joined by Ryan Miller of the American Bankers Association. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. Would you like to quickly let us know a bit more about yourself, then your role at the American Bankers Association to kick things off?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really excited to talk with you, and then also here at Finovate. The American Bankers Association, which represents banks of all sizes, that's one of the things. We're the only one in the industry that has community banks, regional banks, and the largest banks. So I do the innovation policy there. So a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? Essentially, it's a lot of the new and exciting areas. Maybe there's not a lot of laws present or regulations, or maybe they were written but a long time ago, need to be keep pace with the technological change. So I represent our members in engaging with Congress or with the regulators on ways to build frameworks that they can pursue responsible innovation in, and then ensure a level regulatory playing field with all participants in the ecosystem.
Excellent. Sounds great. And you're here today to give a keynote on the future of open banking in the US and the benefits of being an early mover. For those not in attendance, can you give us a brief insight into some of the key takeaways from that?
Yeah, no, so it's very much a hot topic these days. You know, it's a live exercise, in fact, from a regulatory perspective. But what I'm going to be focusing on is more of the market. A lot of people don't really understand that everything we have today in the US in open banking is a product of the market. There's actually not an effective compliance date that has been reached yet under the rule. So everything that we have with all the sharing, all the use cases, that's been driven by the participants in a way that's working collaboratively within a market environment. So I focus on that. And we have to address the elephant in the room, and literally in my presentation I have an elephant in the room, but nonetheless, there's a lot that can be done outside of the context of regulation and laws, and really to benefit the consumer and the participants in the ecosystem. And that's what I focus on.
Excellent, yeah. And I guess just to briefly touch on the regulatory side then, but obviously, as you mentioned, been a lot of talk around the future of the 1033 rule in particular. What's your take on that, and how would you describe the current state of play, I guess, with open banking at the moment?
Yeah, no, so that's something we're actively doing. As I mentioned, it's a live exercise, so comments are due October 21st. There's been a lot of, I think it's fair to say, like kind of a soap opera. For those of you that aren't normally in the space, it's not always this exciting, but there's a lot to watch, and then, good for me to comment on and just observe. But really what's important is we don't want to lose sight of getting it right. There's the law, there's the market, all these things have to work harmoniously together. So we're very engaged with our members to talk about what they would like to see in a reproposed rule. We have a process. The Bureau wants to do an accelerated rulemaking, but it still takes time. I mean, the government is not fast with these, and nor should they be. They want to get it right. And, so we're giving our feedback, and then other stakeholders are giving feedback. And then in the meantime, I like to come to events like this because I can hear different perspectives. It's really important that we don't get ossified in our thinking about hey, it has to be this way. Instead, listening to other sides and, oh, well, that makes sense. I didn't consider that. And then, have that possibly reflected in the regulation and then in the best practices. That's where we are now. And I expect that to continue to take shape. And then we'll continue to engage with the Bureau and other stakeholders as things develop. But looking forward to seeing what's there. There's a lot of things we care very deeply about, and want to make sure that that's reflected in the regulation.
So I guess looking at the US specifically then, what would you say are some of the key applications of benefits of open banking right now?
Yeah, so we like to tell, I tell during my presentations and talking with our members, remember that you're a consumer too. It's very easy to just think about yourself purely in the context oh, I work for the American Bankers Association, or I'm at a bank, or I'm at a fintech. But ultimately, we're consumers as well, and you want to be able to shape an environment that really caters to the consumer. And they care about certain things. They want to be able to share their information across different applications. You don't want to have to type in all of your personal information all the time. If it's already at one place, wouldn't it make sense if I could just move it over there? And you could do that in a way that's safe and secure. But there are some things the consumer cares about, which is usually is it easy? This is something I want to do? And then there's other things that a lot of the business stakeholders care about, which is privacy. How is the information used? Information security. How is it protected and safeguarded in transit and at rest? and things like that. You have concepts of screen scraping and application programming interfaces. Like some consumers might be interested in that, but more likely than not, they're going to probably someone else will figure that out. So the people who have to figure that out are us. And as we're building this framework through the regulation and through the market best practices, we want to make sure that we account for that. The consumers, have the good experience, but then they're also protected, and I think that's really important for us to enable that responsible innovation. So I always joke that I'm a compliance guy. I am not the person that comes up with use cases, but what I want to do is help support a framework that allows those business people to come up with those ideas. That's going to benefit consumers and keep everything safe and secure, and that way everyone wins.
Excellent. Yeah. I guess what kind of challenges exist then for banks when it comes to adopting open banking, and how should they be approaching their strategies for this?
So there are a lot of challenges. So this activity really started off almost unbeknownst to banks in a way. It was through a process called screen scraping, and I mentioned it. That's essentially where entities are using the login credentials, username and password of bank customers, and then they log in on their behalf and use software to scrape everything that's happening there. So you can see why that would be a problem. Even if you only wanted to share your checking account information, if they're logging into your online banking account, they can see everything that's there. And likewise, how are they protecting that information? Not only the information in your portal, but also your login credentials. You can see how that could be a problem. So in a response to that, we've really seen a shift, and it's been quite remarkable, the adoption, but moving to APIs. Now APIs are not a panacea. They are expensive to build and maintain. You have to have a bilateral access agreement where you're agreeing on what are the time frames that this can be adopted? What are the what are the ways that this information can be used and protected? So those are very, very difficult to negotiate. And then not only that, building and maintaining. So there are costs. The data that banks have, in order to make it available through these, there's a process called data governance where they have to ensure that the information is accurate, accessible, has integrity, has gone through all the proper checks, that they are able to share it from a legal perspective. So all those things have to take place. So as you can see, that's very challenging. And then the information, the way that it's used, there's an obligation that they have from their prudential regulators to safeguard and control risk. So depending on once it leaves the bank's doors, banks still feel responsibility for that, because if it has a peril for the financial ecosystem, if there's, what happens if there's a data breach? What happens if it's used in unauthorized ways? The bank has to be thoughtful about that type of thing. So you can see there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, and so that's really challenging. But they want to structure it in such a way that that they're really helping their consumers and their customers, and then making sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the ecosystem. I always consider it like a channel. Water is going to find its way to flow, but if you want to harness it constructively, you build a channel, and then you can use it, really to direct the flow. And that's I think one of the things that has to bear in mind. We're having a debate right now about things like the ability to recoup costs and the liability regime. Those are really tough questions. There aren't easy answers, but I think they're important ones to ask and to answer, because this is such a challenging but compelling environment.
Excellent. I guess, how do you see open banking technology evolving moving forward now?
Well, I've been talking a lot about APIs. Before that, I was talking a lot about screen scraping. There's going to be something else. There's new and exciting ways to share information. The key is to do so in a way that's safe and secure. And if there's a better way than APIs and that comes along, then I think we'll need to see that. And there will be more costs associated with that. But in the long run, it makes sense to do as well, because you're bettering the environment. One of the things I think that the previous version of the 1033 rule got right, and you don't hear a lot of people talking about that, and there are some good things in there, is it doesn't use the term application programming interface. It uses developer interface, and the idea is that it's technology neutral. As things get better, you can replace it with something that's better. And I think that's going to happen. So I am not a technologist, so I don't know how I ended up doing the things I do, but I think it's really important to have an approach that incorporates the current best use of technology.
Excellent. I guess obviously given your role supporting the Office of Innovation at American Bankers Association, what other technologies have been high on the agenda for banks this year, would you say?
So we're very popular these days. So there was a very, really an epic-making law that was passed earlier this year, the Genius Act, and that had to do with creating a regulatory regime for payment stablecoins. So we get a huge amount of incoming questions about that, people trying to understand the technology, the use cases, the implications for banks, the risks to the financial stability. There's a lot of really challenging questions. There's rulemaking on a very ambitious scale that's going to be happening. And then right now Congress is looking at market structure, for things outside of stablecoins, like different types of digital assets. So that's a huge area that we've been getting a lot of questions on. And then another area, I think it's fair to say, is artificial intelligence. That one's different because you have different versions of technology with artificial intelligence. The term has been around since 1956, like the golden age of sci-fi, but now you have generative AI, which is obviously, a new breed of that. But interestingly enough, from our members, they've been deploying, different types of AI applications for decades. And they've been doing so in a very strong and mature risk management framework. So that one is more of how can I use this, in ways, within my risk management framework that already exists. And those are the types of questions we get, and then helping to educate the policymakers about that risk management framework, because it's probably not a lot of people know about SR 11.7, but it's something that's really important to the banking industry. And then telling policymakers about this, like, oh wow, you guys have been doing this since, having this the supervision program since 2011. That's amazing. And teaching other industries about that is important. So it's kind of two different versions. Stable coins, everyone's asking all these questions, and we don't have a lot of answers yet, versus AI, where I think that there's already some answers that are in place.
Excellent. I guess just briefly to finish off then, how do you see the US banking scene kind of evolving over the next few years?
So I think that's the reason that I have a job at ABA. We have the Office of Innovation. Really important to monitor what's happening. We have a very unique banking system in the United States with a lot of community banks. There's 4,500 banks that we have here. And those are small, medium, and large. They all play different roles, and they have different customers, and they really support each other. Because the big banks don't necessarily want to do the same things the community banks are doing, and vice versa. They're very complementary, and they work as a unit. We also have a credit union industry that there's a lot of tension because of the different ways that they are regulated versus banks. Then we have fintechs, but we have this very robust and vibrant ecosystem that's constantly changing. It's really exciting to see how they each individually wrestle with the different technological developments and the shifting regulatory landscape. But it's going to continue to evolve, and that's why we want people to be our ABA members to reach out to us, to get involved in our working groups, to help shape that, because things are changing, but we can do so in a way to help everyone keep pace. It's really important community banks understand the technologies and understand the wants and needs of their customers. And we want them to continue to be around for many years and continue to keep serving their customers and their areas where they do business as they have for centuries. So really, really important to us, and I know to the communities as well.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you so much again, Ryan, for taking the time out to speak for us today. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.